Hello whisky fans, and welcome to another semi-recycled whisky review. This is a very special bottling that I bought from the Isle of Arran distillery when I was there in person in 2015 for £90. This is the distillery exclusive sherry hogshead matured 18-year-old Isle of Arran. So, as I mentioned in the intro, this is another semi-recycled review because I'm just saying goodbye to this bottle that to be honest, I've been trying to make this last as long as possible because I really liked it, and it's unlikely that I'm going to get to try it again. So, lovely presentation case because this is a distillery exclusive from the Isle of Arran. Beautiful presentation case with some magnet closures there. Just give you some details from the label. As I've said multiple times now, this is 18 years old, from a sherry hogshead. It is cask number 318, distilled on the 19th of March 1997, bottled on the 7th of July 2015. My bottle is bottle number 17 out of 210, and it's bottled at a strength of 46.1. Now, that seems like a slightly odd bottling strength. A lot of you will know that a lot of distilleries, including the Isle of Arran, they bottle everything at 46%. So 46.1, what's the reason for the extra 1%? So I inquired about this when I was at the distillery, and I was a little bit sceptical at first, but I was reassured that this is not only a single cask bottling, but even though it's only 46.1% ABV, it's actually cask strength as well. So something quite unusual has happened here. There's been something quite odd about the grain structure of the staves in this particular cask, or possibly also how this cask has been stored, because it's not normal, even over 18 years, for a whisky to go from full strength going into the cask, because you have to remember that even cask strength whisky usually almost always has some water added, to go from that high strength, usually somewhere in the 60s, right down to 46% after 18 years. So this is a bit of an unusual and rather special whisky. What they actually do sometimes is, if they do have one of these rare and exceptional casks where the ABV drops very quickly, they'll actually take one of these extra special casks that they want to make the most of, because sometimes it can even drop as far as below 40%, so it's not even legally allowed to be sold as whisky anymore. What they'll sometimes do is mix that cask of very special whisky that's gone sub-proof with another extra special cask which has a much higher ABV to try and even things out to make something that can be sold legally as whisky. But it's not the case with this one. Luckily they caught it in time. And it may actually be the reason why Isle of Arran decided to bottle this one at the time that they did and offer it as a distillery exclusive before the ABV slipped too far. I'll also mention how impressive it is that the Isle of Arran distillery only opened in 1995. So the fact that they had an 18-year-old whisky bottled and for sale just 20 years later is really quite impressive. They obviously resisted the temptation and had the funds available to do so, to not have to sell all of the good stuff early on. And as always with the Isle of Arran distillery, this is non-chill filtered and natural colour. So let's see how it noses and tastes. Although I am very familiar with that already because I've really savoured this bottle. I've probably had it open for around at least 3 years now, and I've really tried to make the most of it and really make it last. This has probably been my most special bottle that I've had open in the last few years. So quite sad to see it go. But that's what it's for. So immediately on the nose you get that enormous impact from the sherry cask. So this is not a sherry finished whisky. It's not actually a genuine sherry cask. It is a sherry treated hogshead, but it has spent the full 18 years in that cask. So it's not a superficial veneer of an effect that you're getting from the sherry cask. It's full-term maturation, it's the real deal. And you can really tell that by the nose. Some lovely dry sherry notes in there. It's not just being treated with some sweet, syrupy grape juice like some whiskies are. Lovely, proper traditional dry sherry notes. But it's multifaceted sherry. It's sherry of every kind, because you've also got some lovely, juicy, fruity sherry notes in there as well. And there's a little hint of meatiness from the sherry as well. So you can really tell that this isn't a sherry finished whiskey, it's the real deal. Also getting lots of lovely plummy, jammy, ripe fruit notes in there. Some sweet, syrupy grape notes. And what I really love about this whiskey is it's something that sets this apart from cask finished whiskies, as you really get a sense of the distillery character in there. It's not at all covered up by a cask finish. Some lovely notes of lemon, honey, caramel and vanilla, and some really sharp, bright fruitiness that you always get with Arran, and some rather nice bready notes as well. Really does shine through. It's not just your average dumb sherry bomb. Let's see how it tastes. Again, it's very sherry forward on the palate. Some lovely, juicy, fruity, sugary, tangy, effervescent, fizzy sherry notes right on the arrival on the palate. As well as lots of honey, vanilla, caramel, the sort of things that you'd associate more with a bourbon matured whiskey. But they are sherry treated hogsheads, remember, or a hogshead, because this is a single cask whiskey. So you kind of expect to get some influence from the American oak there. There's also a distinct maltiness there, lots of old oily malt, some nuttiness coming through from the 18-year-old malt. So some rather nice notes of almonds, almond oil, walnuts. But then it constantly shifts. It's shifting back towards a sweet, juicy, orangey sherry note. And towards the end of the palate, you're actually getting a rather dry, musty, slightly sulphurous note on the very late stages of the palate. And I think that sulphur is possibly coming through from the sherry cask, but it's not the sort of vile sulphur that really masks other flavours. It's just another element to the character of this really wonderful 18-year-old whiskey. I'm also getting a very faint element on the late stages of the palate, which is sort of a dry, prickly smokiness. And I've got no idea if the Isle of Arran distillery put any peated malt into the mash bill of this whiskey, or if it's just the remains of a peated run in the stills from what they were making before they made this. I've got no idea, but there's definitely something there. It may just be coming from the cask, but it just goes to show that this whiskey's really just about got everything going for it. It's a really characterful and really complex single malt. As for the finish, getting some musty, ripe fruit notes, some honeyed vanilla, some old malt, and some sweet old oak in the mix there. So even the finish is really complex. Really is a stunning whiskey, and I'm going to go out there and say that it's actually far better than the standard official 18-year-old bottling that you can get from Arran these days. I think that delicate fruitiness mixed with the slightly austere barley notes and the little hint of smoke actually reminds me quite a bit of something Japanese, maybe like a heavily sherried Miyazaki. And obviously I mean back when the Japanese distilleries were still putting out their really old stuff under their standard bottlings before everything started to go a little bit downhill. What I will say is that I do admit that this one, because I've had it in the bottle open for so long, has lost a little bit of its flavour from what I recall from when I first opened it. Because whiskey is a curious thing. People think that whiskey is completely inert. You'll hear a lot of people say that once whiskey is put into the bottle, it doesn't continue to age. But it's not strictly true. For a start, bottle shock is definitely a thing. As it is in wine, it is in whiskey. When a whiskey is first put into the bottle, if you get it rather quickly and open it, you can get a whiskey that's rather harsh and closed. If you allow a whisky to have a little bit of air in the bottle, or simply a lot of time stuck in a sealed bottle, it will start to open up a little bit. But the same can also be said if you allow a lot of air to sit in an almost empty bottle. It can actually open up a little bit too far and you start to lose some of those flavours. But must say that this one, even though it started to mild out a little bit, doesn't really matter too much because this is literally all I've got left. It's still excellent, absolutely astounding whisky. Please comment below and let me know what your experiences are with having whisky sitting around in bottles long term, and let me know what you think about these rather wonderful Isle of Arran Distillery exclusive bottlings if you've been fortunate enough to track down any. Cheers.